Hello there, my name's Fund. I also go by Carson sometimes, and I run the game The Throne of Adar. This is, I believe, the 13th DM diary for that game, and of course, as always, I'm going to give a very short recap, and then some of my thoughts about particularly the 13th session that we have played. However, there's something I should inform you of. We have been on a hiatus of our game for about 3 weeks as I started a new job, and it became a very large burden to do D&D the same way I had. Unfortunately, I've had to drop 2 of my games I played in, and I've had to put the other one on hiatus, as well as mine, for that time. But now it's been about 3 weeks, and I'm slowly getting back into it. So that means I need to do these and catch up, but that also means it's been about 3 weeks since this session. I have written notes down, but for that reason, it'll probably be a pretty short video. Anyway. The thing that had happened last session was that the party had been captured by the river rats. Not quite captured, but they were ambushed in a fight, and at the end, Willie Rose had the gun to Newt's head, and they started to negotiate. Now, during this break time, my players had been planning a lot of things of what to do, and I had to actually break one of my rules as a DM. I don't like explaining the reasons for my NPCs usually, but I had to explain the reasons for my NPCs more or less, to give them some solace. Anyway, our session starts, and none of the plans that they had thought they were going to do happened. They didn't do any of them. What ended up happening was Willie Rose was looking towards Rufus to see if Rufus would side with him. And instead of the party negotiating with Willie Rose, of course they didn't know this, but they decided to use Rufus to negotiate and be like the middleman. But as soon as they tried to get Rufus involved, he would become involved, but because of that, he would take the opposite side. Of course, he wouldn't side with them. He has nothing to gain. The party, even though they had made a deal with him to help him find information on this other gang in Port Crevice, they had believed for some reason that made them have negotiation power, as if Rufus would not rob them. Of course, in roleplay, he kept telling him over and over, "You have done nothing for me. You've proven nothing. You're worth no more to me than the items on your back. And you have those blossom badges. You are walking golden geese." And after some time in negotiation, they realize that things aren't going the right way. I also have them on a timer because Newt's bleeding out. And eventually, they do negotiate, or they try to negotiate really good terms for themselves. But Rufus gives them 3 options. Number 1, they can hand over the blossom badges, and if they do well enough in finding the gang in Port Crevice, he'll be willing to give them back. Number 2, they can give everything to him willingly. Number 3, they can fight it out, and, well, winner takes all. Of course, the party started this option. He also offered to take all of their money. But stuck in between these options, the party decided ultimately to give them their blossom badges. A big hit, for sure, but nothing too bad. And with that, the negotiations ended, and they all went off their way. The party finally making an enemy that they might be able to handle. The party definitely have a lot of people that they dislike, a lot of people who have wronged them and they wish to get back at. But all of those people are so strong. For example, Kronos, who has enslaved them, is, as far as they know, a god. That's how strong he is. They have no means of hurting him or defying him. So there's no point in hating someone like that, because there's nothing to hate. You can't do anything. However, Willie Rose is a little bit different. Same with Rufus and the River Rats of Maplewood. They can be hated, and they can be affected. Maybe right now the party can't stop them, and maybe they lost this fight, but they really do not like them now. And they are people that they might be able to handle. So the party finally has someone to kind of look into and negotiate with. But after this, they pretty simply go back to the town. They stop by the pelt shack ran by Loudgrade. They learn some of the history of Mother Devorator and Life Devour Anthros from him and what happened to his father, who his father ended up being devoured and killed in front of him. And everyone thinks he's a crazy man. They had willingly given him some information. They had given him the location of the Fraudolian camp, information about Mother Devorator, the Anthros Sothis, They gave him a lot of information for little to nothing. Later on, they would go, Tyr as well, would go to the Leaping Frog, the famous tavern here. They would try some of the swamp brew from Bertley Himmons, who they had all previously met very briefly. And they basically sat there, got food, ate, talked. They ended up getting a message from Bertley Himmons, who he offered to pay for their beer and give him some swamp brew to leave if they would take a message to a friend of his in Port Crevice, which they had decided to do so. And not much more had happened there. Besides, they walked in, they saw people. This session was really a lot of the things happened at the start. Thankfully, no one died, none of our players. And then they went and roleplayed in the town. They basically finished off the stuff. There, they also met a group of hunters called the Rashaka. They are a traditional group who went to hunt. And once again, they were paid 5 silver doctrines each, but they gave them all the information, the locations, the Frogolians, the creatures. They even mentioned some things about Aldania. And this is the point I want to make. My players don't realize, and I'm sure this is probably for a lot of D&D players, they don't realize the value of information, how important it is. Ever since in Maplewood, they have said a lot of information about Aldania and the stuff that they know is going on in the swamps, which is not to say it's a bad thing. It's not to say that they shouldn't do that. However, giving all that information out, now there's more variables. They're not the only ones who know this. No telling what might happen. Not to mention, they had, this is something I suppose is really important, I forgot to say. On the way back to town, as payment to Shlomo Pigrider for helping them, they literally told Shlomo their entire story. They told him everything. Everything. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I mean, the point is they've basically been sharing a lot of information, which could have bad effects. But after they hanged out with Bertley and they go there to the tavern and such, they more or less head off to the church. They're going to meet Father Caban, a priest of Ravost at the Ravost temple here, in order to try and figure out what's going on with the farmer Twithen Tiest father, in hopes that they will be able to get him to give them horses afterwards. But before this, they decide to stop by the stables, which they very quickly realize that the stables are empty and that there's nothing. And so they head off to the temple. There, their session ends. It's pretty simple. Perhaps there's more to talk about, but it has been a while. And that's just a short recap. The biggest takeaway, though, is that the players share a lot of information pretty freely. And that's not to be like, oh, yeah, you shouldn't do that. It's just they don't realize how dangerous it is. These people know things. Like they told Shlomo about Kronos, and they yelled it out loud, and they don't understand that now the river rats, to some extent, know about Kronos, and they can probably place together, if they're smart enough, that Kronos may be in Mount Matron, then at the volcano, or someone is. There's a lot of information here that they've given around that gives me, the DM, a lot of free space to play with, and, well, quite frankly, set up in so many different ways. But, you know, I think we're all kind of ready to get on Maplewood, and so everyone's kind of in a rush to get through. No one's thinking too much. We're playing pretty casually, but we're really trying to get to this area. Anyway, that's a short recap. I don't have much to talk about on this. It's been so long. And honestly, that was a pretty bad recap, too. But the VOD's there, if you wish. The VOD's on the channel. You can watch us live every week. We're now switching to 11 a.m. on Saturdays. So you can watch us live every day. Every Saturday, 11 a.m. Or you can watch the VODs. Either way, they'll be posted here eventually, as well as DM Diaries. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for your support and watching. Take care. And these videos should be getting better here soon as I catch up to where we are.